Welcome to America's Top Rebbetzins. Please click on the subscribe button to subscribe to us on the America's Top Rebbetzins YouTube page, or click follow to follow us on your podcasting app so that you are the first to know when an inspiring new episode is posted. May this class be for Refuah Shalema for Rachel Devorah Bat Shoshana. I am honored to have on today's show Rebbetzin Braha Bender. Braha is the founder and director of 100 Fun Things, an organization dedicated to help Jewish women have more fun through events, trips, and a popular 14-week course called The Artist's Way that enables women to develop the resources and the support they need to do what they love. She's married to Rabbi Yonason Bender, a psychotherapist and rabbi in Jerusalem. Thank you so much for being here. Please tell us more about yourself and what you do.
Thank you so much. First of all, it's a huge honor to be invited. I was looking through some of the big names you've had on your podcast, and I marked a whole lot of them to listen to myself later because these are some really special people. So I think you're doing a huge service.
Thank you so much.
I just love supporting Jewish women to be themselves. I think that we are filled with amazing, magical, wondrous resources, from our incredible emotional capacity to care for our children and our homes and our marriages and one another, to the incredible gifts that Hashem has given each of us as individuals, which differ from person to person. And it is just my most exciting thing to help women be more and more themselves.
That's so beautiful. And you're right, because each one of us individually as women was given talents and skills and abilities by Hashem. And then through those talents, skills, and abilities, we shine. And the fact that you help women unlock that potential and unlock their inner light is amazing. So I really admire you for the work that you do.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So today we're actually going to be talking about a holiday. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the Jewish holiday of Purim, which is coming up soon. And there's so much to say about this holiday. It has so much richness and depth that can be found beneath the surface of the story. So today we're going to get into all that depth and meaning. But first, let's start at the beginning. Can you please tell us the story of Purim?
Sure. You know, it's funny. I was just telling my daughter, my 5-year-old Tamima, this story on our couch. And I explained to her that there was a evil king named Ahasuerus, and he had a big party to show everybody that he had conquered the Jewish people and taken all of the beautiful things from our Beis Hamikdash and was using them to do frivolous and crass things. And he said he wanted all the Jews to come in order to show off to them how he had gotten them. And so that's where we started. And her little eyes got big and she said, "What happens next?" And so, you know, the story of Purim could be told for, many hours, or it could be told for 5 minutes. So which version are you looking for?
Well, let's start with like a basic overview, because many Jews are familiar with the story, but for those who really aren't, I really do want to give them a foundation. So let's give a good overview of the story, and then we're going to dive deep into the themes of Purim, into the deeper meaning of Purim. But so let's just get started with an overview.
Sure. Well, what happened in Shushan, which is a city that is now located in what would be somewhere around modern Persia, I believe, would be that essentially there was a monarch named Ahasuerus in Hebrew. I forget the English name, the anglicized name, really. Whatever it sounded like in Babylonian that would be the more accurate version, but I don't know Babylonian. And he did come to power, and he was celebrating his conquest. And he invited the Jewish people to a feast that he had celebrating his conquests, including taking over the Jewish people and decimating our ability to live in our own homeland and our access to our own our rituals and our temple and so on. He was part of a chain of people who had achieved this. It wasn't him on his own. It was, he was part of a legacy of destruction, really, when it came to the Jewish people.
Yes.
And so we as a nation faced a choice, the regular average Joe Jewish guy, which was go to this festival held by the government, or refuse to go to the festival, standing up for our pride as a Jew and really for what's right, and risk being killed. And that was a very serious decision. Yeah. And the majority of the Jewish leadership at the time said, you should probably go to the festival because you're not supposed to die. You're not supposed to die. And, but for most things, life comes first when it comes to Jewish practice and law. But there was one kind of outlier when it came to Jewish leadership, and his name was Mordechai. And he said, don't go. He said, don't go. He was really kind of an isolated opinion. So most of the Jews did go. And it turned out that was the wrong call. And the outcome of that was that an advisor named Haman came to power, and he wanted to kill the Jews. He was really the Hitler of his time.
Yeah.
And he essentially paid Ahasuerus to be given the right to send memos to all of the different military forces and police forces and just the general public at that time. And letting them know that there were particular days set aside where they could actually murder as many Jews as they want and take their belongings. And so the Jewish people immediately went into a state of terror, a state of mourning, and a state of tshuva, a state of really realizing they'd made the wrong call, and they needed to reclaim their Jewish identity on a very deep level. And while all this was happening, kind of on the meta level, on the macro level, on the micro level, there was sort of this subplot occurring, but this was history, which was that Ahasuerus at this same festival had murdered his wife. He had called his wife Vashti and said, "I'd like you to dance naked before me and all of my buddies, all my drunk buddies," and she refused. It's really ambiguous whether she was doing that out of a sense of her own dignity or whether it was for other reasons. She's really an ambiguous character there. Most agree she wasn't doing it for very good reasons, but there's some opinions otherwise. You can read it, in different ways. And in any case, she doesn't come, and he has her killed off with her head. And after I don't know, weeks, months, whatever it is, he decides he wants another woman in his life, and so he has his police forces forcibly gather every attractive woman in his kingdoms, and one of them is named Esther. She's actually named Hadassah. That's her Jewish name, but she's called Esther, and she does not want to go. She does not want to go to the palace of this like horrifying maniac who murders women and is just not, but she's forced to go. And she is the niece of Mordechai, one of the Jewish leaders at the time, the one who said, don't go to this festival. And Mordechai says to her, listen, don't tell anyone you're Jewish. Don't tell anyone your identity. We don't even know why yet in that point in the story. But off she goes. And out of all the women that Ahasuerus is essentially raping, I mean, let's call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
She is the one selected to be queen. And when children are told this story, it's like, oh, and Esther became the queen, yay! But actually, kind of like the little darker than that when you look at the actual history here.
Yes.
So there's a second subplot, which is while all this is going on, Mordechai, her uncle, is kind of hanging around as close to the palace gates as he can to kind of find out, okay, how's Esther doing? What's going on with his niece? Because obviously he's very worried. And he overhears a plot between two fellows who are part of the palace staff, Bigson and Teresh, to murder the king. And he reports this, and he saves the king's life. Okay, that's noted in their legal documents of the time, and that's sort of like set aside. Another thing that's going on while Mordechai is hanging around the palace gates is that Haman, who's risen to power, is demanding everyone to bow when they see him, and most people do, again, because generally Jewish law does say you choose life over most commandments. If it's a choice between dying for something or fulfilling a Torah commandment, generally continuing to live comes first. But Mordechai says, nope, this is different. And unlike most people all the time, he won't bow. And this makes Haman crazy because Haman is a narcissistic Looney Tunes megalomaniac. And so that's going on. All that's flying. One day, Mordechai, all these plots kind of come together in this key moment in the Megillah. And I love sitting in shul hearing the Megillah every year. I will never get over how crazy this story is.
Yeah,
it's a great story, and it really happened. It's just, so Mordechai approaches Esther and he says to her, listen, you're the queen now, and who knows whether this was the moment for which you came to power. You might not know this, but there is essentially there's a Holocaust being planned. And Esther you have the chance to try to stop it. You need to go to the king and you need to ask him to revoke this decree. And Esther doesn't say no. I don't know if I would say no. I mean, she says, listen, the way it works in the palace is that this guy's nuts. Anyone who approaches Ahasuerus and hasn't been summoned to him, they generally get killed. Like, that's considered disrespectful to the king. And I myself haven't been summoned for over 30 days. And Mordechai says the most powerful line to me, it gives me chills. It gives me chills. He says, listen, if you don't do this, if you don't try to save the Jewish people, then redemption and relief will come to the Jewish people from some other place. But you and your legacy will mean nothing. You'll perish. And it's just the craziest moment, because Esther realizes, like, life is not about continuing to live. Life is about the meaning that living has.
100%.
And she says, all right, I'm going to do it, but spend 3 days praying, fasting, like reconnecting with God as deeply as you can, everybody, the Jewish people, and then I'll go. And it's so powerful. There's one of the Psalms in Tehillim. Most of them are written by King David, but one is said to be written by her, and it's so raw. It starts saying, literally, these are the lines in Tehillim. If someone said this in a Beis Yaakov, she'd be kicked out. But Esther wrote it, and it's in Tehillim. She says, my God, why have you abandoned me? Like, it continues on from there. It's a whole emotional process. It doesn't stay there, but like, it's raw. She's scared, and she's connecting, and she's just being real with Hashem, like the most vulnerable moment. And after these 3 days of like, just like Hashem, there's nothing else. I might die, but I'm doing this. She walks in, and Ahasuerus reaches out with his scepter, and he doesn't kill her. He's charmed by her, and she invites him to basically like the club. Like, she wants to have a drinking party with him, like wine, a nice time. She's going to wear the nice clothes. It's going to be great. You know, I'm thinking like Kim Kardashian on her island, you know, Lahav Dil. This is like, you know, and so there they are. And he wants to know, like, why has she come to him? What does she want? And by the way, to this drinking party, she also invited Ahasuerus' best buddy Haman. And she doesn't say, she's just buttering him up, just being a sweetie, just, you know, treating the king with all this like honor, probably very seductive, you know. And she says, you know, all I want is to just hang out with you some more. Will you come back tomorrow? And can we just do this again? And so he's like, yeah, of course, you know. And in the meantime, that night, there's this crazy line. Oh my gosh, again, it gives me the chills. It says, that night the king can't sleep. And the way the word the king is read is the same. The person reading the Megillah is supposed to slightly change the way they read it so that it sounds kind of like Rosh Hashanah, HaMelech. And it's just like, that king can't sleep. God can't sleep. We're keeping God awake. We're waking him up. God woke us up and we're waking God up. And Ahasuerus, the king down here, calls for, he can't sleep, so he calls for his books of like, who's done something nice for me that I haven't rewarded, and Mordechai's name comes up. Turns out Mordechai tried to save him, and he's like, who's this guy Mordechai? We haven't rewarded him. Wow, he saved my life. And he calls for his advisor, you know, who's around? And Haman's around, and Haman's always around, right? And he's a social climber. And Haman comes in, and Ahasuerus says, listen, what would you do for someone that the king really wants to honor? And Haman, it says this in the Megillah, thinks in his heart, who would the king want to honor more than me? And so he says, well, what I would do is I would take a horse that belongs to the king, and I would take an outfit that belongs to the king, clothes belong to the king, and I'd have one of the king's top advisors walk the horse, and this guy sitting on the horse in the king's clothes through the entire city saying, this is what we do for someone that the king wants to honor. And the king goes, great, go do that for Mordechai. And Haman's like, okay. And so he's doing this for Mordechai, and as he's doing this, like, everything is going wrong for Haman. The plot just twists for this guy, and and he's walking through the streets, and there's this one commentary that explains that people used to use chamber pots at the time. There's a chamber pot emptied on his head while he's walking Mordechai through the street by accident. It's his daughter. She totally doesn't mean to do this. I'm sure he wasn't exactly the warmest of fathers, right? So I'm sure she doesn't mean to do this, but this is what she does, and he's a mess. And right that night, right after doing this, Mordechai, he has to clean up quickly, run to the king's like drinking party, back into club. And the king says to Esther, they're all there, they're all lying around, they're all drinking, and the king says to Esther, honey, what can I do for you? Up to half of my kingdom I would give. He's like really into it. And Esther says, listen, I wouldn't even bother you if it wasn't for it wouldn't even be worth troubling the king if it weren't for the fact that this is my entire people. And she says that she and her entire people are about to be murdered, and the king freaks out, and he's like, who would dare to do this? And she turns to Haman and she says, Haman, hara hazeh, Haman, this evil man. And the king is so upset. He loses it so completely. He doesn't even react. He leaves. He takes a breather. He just needs to take some deep breaths. I don't even know. He's probably having a panic attack. And in the meantime, Haman is like, he loses it because this is an ancient ruler. This is death, immediate death. And he turns to Esther and he's like, please, he's begging for his life. And he trips and he falls over Esther. They're on these sort of chaise long couches. And it looks like he's trying to physically seduce, attack, do something sexual with Esther. And the king walks in that moment and he says, would you try to conquer my wife with me in the house? And it's like, that is it for Haman. And there's an advisor of the king who some people say is Daniel from another book, character coming in from another. And he says, but it might have been Daniel, might have not been. And he says, yeah, by the way, did you know that Haman had built this what do you call it?
The gallows.
Gallows is right. We're just gaming. This gallows for Mordechai, the guy who saved your life, that's who Haman is. And the king's like, hang him on it. So you'd think that would be the end of the story. The king gives Haman's properties, which are extensive, to Mordechai, elevates Mordechai to his advisor. The queen is, beloved unto everybody. And you think that would be the end of the story, but it's not the end of the story. It's not the end of the story. The end of the story is that Esther and Mordechai go back to the king and say, so can we revoke the decree for this Holocaust? And this king, it's not like he's turned into a good guy. This king is like, anything written by the hand of the king cannot be revoked because those are the rules. Like who wrote the rules? Anyway, so that's what he says. But he says, listen, you can write another decree and you could take my seal and you could say it's in my name. And so Esther and Mordechai write another decree saying that the Jews can fight back. And this shakes the kingdom. Everyone realizes through these events of Mordechai and Esther coming to power and this second decree being written about the Jews being able to fight back, that things have changed. The Jews are now have a different status. And the horrifying day comes when the Holocaust is supposed to begin and the Jews fight back. They don't take anyone's property, nothing. They just defend their lives. They don't, it's forbidden to murder. I guess it's sort of, thank you, Captain Obvious, but you can kill someone in self-defense, and they do, because a lot of people are trying to kill them. And that's Purim. That's Purim. What we celebrate is, how they say, if you had a time machine, you'd go back and kill the guy who was worse than Hitler, and then no one would ever know you did it because no one would know his name. That's what this was. This was the time machine. It was going to be a Holocaust. It was going to be worse than the Holocaust because it was going to be everybody. And that was what was prevented. And that's what we celebrate. That's what we celebrate on Purim.
Wow, you're an amazing storyteller. I love the way that you tell the story. It's so engaging and so interesting to listen to you. And it's an interesting story to tell. Even it's chock full of information, and I'm so glad now we really have the broad view, and we even have some of the details, and we even know the reason now that we're celebrating Purim. Like we're really avoided. The Jews really avoided a Holocaust, which was major. It's major. It was a significant turning point in history.
Really, it was.
At this point for the Jews. I mean, there's so much more to the Purim story than meets the eye. And one element that always sticks out of my mind, is that God's name is never even mentioned once in the Megillah. And the Megillah, just so in case people don't know, that's a scroll that the story of Esther is written on. It's just one scroll, and the Megillah is written in parchment, and the parchment is wrapped around the scroll. So God's name is never mentioned once in the Megillah, and God seems to be hidden as the story unfolds. But the irony is that he was there all along, every step of the way. So I want to see if you can please delve deeper into this concept of God's concealed presence within the Purim story.
Wow. That is so beautiful. And the truth is, I think it's best expressed by the idea that it says the Jews took on the Torah at Mount Sinai, but we really took on the Torah during the time of Purim, because that's when we went from, it's kind of like when you marry someone and you go from, oh, this is my trophy husband and he does everything I like, and when he doesn't, we have big fights, and Shana Rishona lasts for 10 years, or whatever it is, which, everyone goes through. That's totally normal. I'm joking, but it's normal. When you go from that stage to, this guy needs to do what I want so I feel good about the relationship, to, this is us. Just like I'm forgiving with myself, and okay, like, this is my life. This is my silly little life, and I like myself, and sometimes I don't like myself, and whatever. Sometimes I'm a Slav, and sometimes I'm like with it, but I'm me, and I'm me. I am my own me. I don't have another me. The marriage, hopefully, if you're able to get through the challenging stages of startup stages, it gets to the point where it's like, this is us, and okay, like, we're together. It's us, And so that's what Purim did for God and the Jewish people. It went from, okay, God, show me the miracles. Show me where you are. I want to see, prove it. All the sea splitting stuff, and all the, moving into Israel, and all the big explicit open miracles, to, nah, like, Hashem's got our back. Like, it's not about the big, showy, flashy, like, I'm here, to, no, he's really here. Like, he's really here for me. Like, Hashem's here for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what Purim was all about. And that's kind of what our lives are about, to be honest.
And I totally agree. I love tying Purim and the things that we learn from the Jewish holidays into our lives. Are you able to go like a little bit deeper into that? Because that is so special. You're right. Hashem was there during the Purim story, and he's always there in our lives every day. Do you want to just maybe a little bit expand on that?
Sure. There's a class that I really enjoy teaching. I'm invited to sub in seminaries from time to time. And I like teaching a class about what Jews mean when Jews say the word God. And it's an hour-long class, it can be squished into half an hour, but definitely not like a one sentence thing. But if I had to give like sort of one moment, one gist of it, it would be that a lot of people think of God as here, like I'm here and God's here and I'm having a relationship. But if you really look into the Jewish sources and you explore what Jews mean when Jews say God, it's quite different than any other religion or theology. And it's really more like here, like God's more like here, in the sense that when you turn on, I don't know, Spotify or any other streaming platform, there's something streaming the music. Like, I don't know where that is, but it's streaming it. So yeah. God's streaming you. Like, you are being streamed now. Like, you can change your thoughts. You can change what you are thinking about. You can change, if you take some time, you can change your emotions, try to move yourself from joy to sadness, or sadness to joy, or whatever's appropriate for the moment, but depending on whether you're at a shiva or at a wedding, you can change anything. You can change anything about your physical being today, almost anything at all. But the you who is looking out behind your eyes, the you in you, who is the one doing the thinking or doing the feeling or experiencing your physical reality or living in your body, you can't turn you off and you can't turn you on. Your consciousness itself has a source, and that source is new. That source is something that really likes you a lot. And so it's making you be. So that's quite hidden. There's nothing that's more hidden than that. But there's also nothing that's more present and more revealed if we're able to just take a moment and recognize, just feel that. It's something that you can check. It's checkable, Like, am I making myself, me, am I making myself be? I'm not.
Wow. It's so incredible. I've never heard it put quite this way. I'm internalizing. You're right. We are being streamed because God is creating the world every single second. And by virtue, he's creating us every single second. And he's creating the go, everything that we do every single second. And it's just so interesting, the way that you put it, because I never, we always think about it like we're in control of ourselves. We're the ones who are doing it, us. But really, there's something behind us. There's a, what did you say? The you behind the you, right? Is that what you said?
I think that, I would want to make a distinction between our choices, because certainly we're accountable for our choices. We're making choices. Yes. Like the moment you're there, which is every moment, you're accountable for your life. Yes. But the fact that you are there in the first place, not what you look like, you could choose that. Not even what you're thinking about, you can actually choose that, to an extent. But the you doing the thinking or the feeling, you're not making that. And so that's pretty incredible. There's a lot of different sources that go into it, but one way that you can connect to this idea is that there's many titles for Hashem that we give in the Torah. Hashem's referred to by many different names, and those represent different kinds of relationships, whether the relationship between a child and a mother, or a relationship between a child and a father, a relationship between a husband and a wife, or a person, who's being judged and the judge, or, many other different kinds of relationships. But the title is considered the most essential, the closest we can get to understanding something that's truly beyond comprehension, is the title that's referred to, the fancy name is the Tetragrammaton, spelled Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey, which is an amalgamation of the words Haya, Hoveh, and Yihye, was, is, and will be, the source of being. So it's very pleasant to relax into that truth, into that experience, that actually there's something that's making me be me. And the second that I have accountability. I'm making choices, but there's something making me be, and that something is really super on my side, like really likes me. Like this whole concept, like Hashem loves you, as though Hashem's out here loving you. No, like Hashem's streaming you, the things you want the most, like that, the very source of that desire, that whatever, like Hashem's on your side more than anything or anyone, more than you can imagine. It's hard to talk about these things without going into it at greater length, but I think that Purim speaks to that, the fact that hidden reality that's omnipresent,
I totally agree. Thank you for sharing that, because I feel like it's very real, it's very relatable, and it's a very powerful concept. So thank you. So I know that we talked about a little bit, about God being hidden in Purim as one of the themes, but there are other themes in the Purim story. There's joy, because Purim is in the month of Adar, and we're supposed to elevate our joy in Adar. There's a unity of the Jewish people, that they were safe from this Holocaust. There's a survival of the Jews, and there's so many different themes. So I want to see if maybe there's another theme or two that you want to talk about in Purim.
Wow. Well, Purim's a lot of fun, and fun is my thing.
Oh, good. Okay. I like that.
I founded 100 Fun Things because fun's actually really, really important. And we live in a culture that relates to fun as trivial and as optional and as a unnecessary luxury. And that's just not supported by the data. That's just not factual. Especially for women, gosh, it's just not factual. Like fun is about adventure. It's about connection. It's about safety. It's about creativity. That's what most people mean when they say fun.
Yes.
And those experiences are critical to maintaining our wellness, our basic, really our sanity as people. And a lot of these things are sort of orchestrated for us when we're kids through institutions that we're a part of. Like there's, a lot of people I know, the high school lunchroom is supposed to be like a negative experience, but a lot of people, like I remember when I was a student and I was on Neve campus and Shalhevet and Moreshet, and I got to tell you, the lunchroom was amazing. Like we were having so much fun in the dorms. Like we were staying up all night, like eating these like cheap chocolate wafers all night, like laughing and dancing, and then learning the best story of our lives all day. And like, it was so much fun. And human connection, friendships, a sense of newness, a sense of hope and possibility. These are the things that make us able to, first of all, carry the heavy things that we really do carry, and that we are charged with the great honor of carrying. Life is sometimes real hard, and that is a responsibility and an honor that we're charged with, and we must equip ourselves to do so. And secondly, that's the fuel to do something new, wonderful, possibility. So I think Purim's all about that. I think Purim is all about seeing things from the new point of view, getting outside the box, connecting on a deeper level with each other, with ourselves, with Hashem.
I love that. And I love the way that you feel like fun is so important, because you're right. It is important to human beings. We're human. We need to have fun because that enlivens us. It empowers us to help others, to help ourselves, to bring more joy and light to the world. So I know it's not exactly the topic of Purim, but because you brought it up and because I think it's so important and because you do it so well and you're such a joyful, cheerful person, how? Because so many people have so much trouble bringing that joy and the cheer and the fun in their lives because, as you said, life is hard. People get sick, people lose jobs, people have, all different kinds of issues and problems and relationships and this and that. So how do you do this joy thing?
That's such a great question. And the truth is that it's just like anything else. It takes an effort. It takes investment. It takes commitment, and it takes some time. So, as an example, I must have been in my early 30s when I realized I really want to prioritize my female friendships. I want to have a robust, active crew that I can chill with and turn to when I'm going through a hard time. I realized there's a whole genre of books and movies that I refer to, as friendship porn, which is this concept of the Yaya sisterhood or the sisterhood of the traveling pants. It's everyone has their crew. And I'm everyone but me, everyone but most of the people I know that are kind of isolated and lonely and getting burnt out as we get into our 30s.
Yeah.
And I realized now I could say, thank God, I have a crew.
Awesome. I like that.
Awesome crew, because I invested time. I made time. I chose to apportion the time to go out and get to know and spend time. And people will say I don't have time. And it's a choice. It's a choice what to do with your time. And it's extremely rewarding when you build a relationship. That relationship comes through for you. So it's just like anything else, taking the time to create and maintain friendships. And 100 Fun Things is just making that a little easier for people, because we run events and trips, and my course, The Artist's Way, where people can have places to go to chill out and make friends and connect with one another, and just a super non-judgmental, positive, healthy, creative atmosphere. And I think it's really important. So
I love that. It's healthy. It's healthy for the soul. It really is. Fun is healthy for the soul.
Yeah. Just imagine imagine a universe of women, men too, but we're women. So imagine a world full of women that are just buoyant, that just have got a lot of koach. It's we're okay. We got our girls, we got our thing. We're going to this thing next week. It's going to be awesome. It's fun. I did this thing a few days ago. It was so great. And imagine that, imagine you're feeling good. You're okay. As opposed to oh my God, another day. Obviously there's a lot of gray area in between those extremes, and we're all kind of trying to figure out our own next steps, but at least having the vision to aim for the idea that, oh, no, friendships and fun really matter. They're not just oh yeah, okay, when I have the time. At least setting that as a mental note, as a priority, that's already a game changer, because culture and society do not do that for us.
True. You're right. Yes. Wow. That's good advice. It's very good advice. So thank you. It's friendships and connections, they make life more meaningful. They make life more joyful, and you have people to go through life with. You can lean on them, they can lean on you, and you can, even more importantly, you could have fun together and enjoy life together. It's really great. So now getting back to the fun of Purim, because now we're really going to get into the really fun portion of Purim. Because on Purim, it's customary for Jews to fulfill 4 mitzvot, 4 commandments. So the hearing the Megillah being read, giving mishloah manot, which are baskets of food and drink. My Matanot, no, manot lavyanim. I know I'm saying it wrong. I apologize, but those that giving money to the poor and having a Purim seuda, a meal. So can you please explain to us in depth what each of these mitzvahs mean and why they're so important?
Sure, and you pronounced it beautifully. You
Thank
go. You go. You're
Thank
awesome. Well, I'll tell you, right before we spoke, I turned to my husband, Rabbi Rebbetzin Bender, who's also he's like low-key famous for Jerusalem Therapy, which is his website, and he's on Facebook and everything, and he's my best friend. Oh no, I'm so sorry. See, only human.
It's all good.
I'm going to turn it off.
No problem.
There, see, it's humanizing me. Oy vey. I
No
always
worries.
say I never get any phone calls unless I'm getting interrupted from something else outside of that silence. But in any case, I was asking him and I was saying, okay, can you tell me more about these 4 mitzvahs? Because they're all so beautiful in and of themselves, giving tzedakah, upholding the community, people who are in need, making sure they're taken care of, because we're all in that position at some point and in some way. So tzedakah is not about charity. It's not about, oh, I'm such a good person. It's about the fact that, you're down, sometimes I'm down, and we hold each other up.
100%.
That's what tzedakah is. It's justice. It's upholding a healthy community, takes care of one another. And Matanot and having the seuda and giving, mishloah manot, all these things are beautiful things. Reading Megillah, like, reading the story of Purim, like keeping up with the times in a sense, like remembering that is the spiritual energy that exists at that time, that we can really ride the wave. We can get on the wave if we're aware of what's going on. All those things make sense. But I was asking him, why do we do those things specifically now in connection to Purim? And he said it's about rebellion, which I loved, because I am a rebel at heart. He said, just like Achashverosh tried to destroy Haman, and Achashverosh tried to destroy the Jewish body. The Holocaust at that time was going to be physical. They wanted to kill us physically.
Yes.
Our rebellion was our tshuva was spiritual. We responded by spiritually, really coming close to Hashem. But what we did, the mitzvahs that we celebrate are almost like it's like a slap in the face. It's saying, yeah, you wanted to kill us physically? Here we are having a nice glass of wine. Happy Purim, Achashverosh, and we're taking care of the poor. We're upholding our communities. We're giving gifts. We're giving candy out to one another. We're baking hamantashen. How about that, Haman? How'd you like that hamantashen, Haman? So, that's what it's about. It's about this sense of like fun rebellion, which like, I love any day. That sounds great to me. So.
Wow, I never thought of it like that. I've never heard that perspective. It's such an interesting perspective. I love that. And I also like the perspective of justice. Just because I have and you don't have doesn't mean I'm better than you or you're better than me or anything. It's that justice. It's the scales that you were saying, because then who knows what's going to be tomorrow? And really, who knows what's going to be tomorrow?
Totally.
And this is just, it's Jews helping each other. And like, we really all are one big family. The Jews are wherever you go in the world, there's always a Jew. And when you find them, you're like, my people. I just came back from a trip. I went with my son to Costa Rica, and we were trying to figure out who were the Jewish people. And every time we found one, we felt like a sense of relief, because we felt like we weren't alone,
100%.
That's beautiful.
It's such a fun feeling, like when you're in an airport,
Yes.
and you see the one Jew and you're like, my guy.
Yes, exactly. My husband called me on the phone. Are there any other Jews there? I'm like, I don't know. I'm looking. I'm like, okay, there's one over there.
100%.
It's so fun. It's so true. We are one big family. And so now here's more fun. One of the reasons that so many people find Purim to be so much fun is because we get to dress up in costumes. So can you please explain to us the reason why we wear costumes on Purim?
Sure. I mean, the joke about Purim is that's when people take off their costumes, and they reveal that the inner fairy princess, or,
Okay. The crown, beautiful. I love it.
We're ready. And ordered some wings.
Oh, cool.
Wouldn't be Purim for me without wings and a crown.
You
So,
look like a fairy. I love it.
so that's the joke that people reveal their inner little fun self. But I think it's just about the fact that we can sort of get in on the joke of this funny world, how everyone is wearing these costumes, these roles that we play all day with each other. Even God is sort of playing a role with us, like, okay, no, I'm your judge, no, I'm doing this. And it's like, but really, like, Rabbi Leib Kellerman says that death is the reality filter, and that when we get to the next world, it's just clarity. It's just like, oh, this is how it really is. Oh, right. And the next world's all about just hanging out. It's about being in love. It's about connecting. Rav Shlomo Wolbe, Rav Kellerman's Rebbe, who has a straight line from the founder of the Musar movement, Rav Yisrael Salanter. So this is some real pure, 100% unfiltered Torah. He explains that the most important thing in life is time well wasted. In other words,
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, not my words, his words. And he says, like, we think that we're sort of brainwashed by the world today to think that the real important, meaningful things in life are what we do in terms of like all these titles we have, all these little costumes, the hats we wear. I got to go out and I got to be the CEO, or I got to make sure the thing gets done, or I got to, get to that grocery store and buy the ingredients for the 5-course meal, or, whatever it is, whatever we're trying to accomplish. And we think like, oh, we come home to our family, and that's where we are, like Shabbos, and like that's where we rest in order to recharge for like real life. And we think that the time that, like, say like someone's married and she's sitting on the couch with their husband at the end of the day and they're like shooting the breeze and kind of giggling together and like talking about their day, and that's like the trivial thing, that's like wasting time, and at most it has value in that it's giving them a little energy to get back to real life. And that's just totally upside down. Like, it's just not true. And we'll see that one day. We'll have total clarity about that one day, because life is for love. That's what the Torah says. And so it's actually like that time that we're just hanging out with the people we love, whether that's a spouse or our kids, or our friends, connecting, just connecting.
You're right.
And
Those are my favorite times. I totally agree. Yes.
Yeah. Like that's what we do all the other stuff for. Like, the purpose of the 6 days of the week is Shabbos. It's not that on Shabbos we rest up for the week. It's that the whole week we prepare for Shabbos. And it's so easy to forget that. So I think like we're always wearing these funny costumes, and we're always like, oh, and here I go and I'm doing my thing and I'm part of it. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a shameful thing. I'm making a joke, but not because it's ugly or shameful, but we can get in on the joke. I'm like the big wink of like, what are we really all doing under the skin? We're all these like little bunnies who like want to hang out and cuddle and like be like, let's hang out. And that's actually the most holy thing. That's actually really, really real. That's not trivial at all.
I agree with you. You're right. It's so interesting that you say that, because the more I think about, my life and moments in my life and times in my life, those are like just the times I'm hanging out. Like last night, my son had his friends over. He had them over during Shabbos, but then they came over again after Shabbos, and they were just hanging out. They're such good boys. They're just hanging out. And my daughter was doing something. The other one was up in her room. I was in the kitchen. I was making some chicken soup. And it was just so nice and so normal, but yet so meaningful. Like, those were the special moments versus me going from point A to point B, because I'm always bouncing all over the place. When I wake up in the morning, it's like I'm being shot out of a cannon. Like, I am just going, and that's not what I love. I mean, yes, of course I do it. And yes, of course things have to get done. And yes, I do them, but that's not what it's about. And I love that you just pointed that out. You're right. It's not that life is about love and connecting with others. And I feel like there's a theme now, like we talked about Purim and how all the Jews are connected and they were all working together to save themselves. And they did it through this, the prevention of this Holocaust. And then you're talking about like friendships and connecting through friendships and doing fun things. And now we're talking about, connecting to each other during the fun, just normal times that we spend with each other. So I'm seeing a theme emerge.
Yeah.
And now I want to ask you an interesting question, because I know people are wondering this. Whenever we talk about Purim, somebody always asks this question, so I want to have it answered for them. Alcohol on Purim. So Jews drink alcohol on Purim. Could you please explain that particular custom to us?
Sure, absolutely. There's what the mitzvah is, like the halacha, and then there's the way that people sometimes erroneously interpret the halacha. And these things really have to be distinguished, because sometimes people will make the really kind of absurd statement, I saw a religious Jew, doing this horrible thing. At which point I think, well, if they did the horrible thing, I guess they're not a religious Jew. I guess they're a person wearing a hat, or they're someone wearing a skirt. But if they were breaking Jewish law in such a heinous way, that means they're not religious. So so it's important to define like what is actual Judaism based on halacha, Jewish law, and what's like, I don't know, some punk weird interpretation that's people are maybe using the lingo, but has zero relationship to Judaism at all, actually. The mitzvah on Purim is to drink alcohol, for men specifically, to drink until the way it says, until they can't distinguish between cursed is Haman and blessed is Mordechai. What that means, and what's clearly delineated in the sources, is that the goal is to use alcohol as an intoxicant to reach a point of kind of like, I want to say consciousness, but for those who are not hippy dippies and who are like, oh, I'm not into all that consciousness stuff, can you just talk my language? I'm talking like that you're feeling relaxed, you've got a nice buzz on, and you really can sort of emotionally connect to the idea that no matter what is happening on the world stage, because, especially lately, we've seen how crazy politics can get. No matter what's happening on the world stage, there is a source. There's someone running the show who is laughing behind the scenes, not in a mean way, not laughing. They say man plan, God laughs. That doesn't mean God's laughing at you. It means God's sort of like chuckling, like, don't worry, I got you. I got you. I got this. It's like when you're hanging out with your best friend and you're like, oh my God, how's it going to work? And she just starts giggling. She's like, you're going to be amazing. Like that. That's what it means, man plans and God laughs. So that's the mindset we're supposed to get into. Again, that big wink, that seeing behind the mask, behind the scenes, and realizing no matter what's going on in our lives or on the world stage, like if anything reminds us there's a bigger picture behind all those crazy details, the Purim story does. I mean, that was insane. Like, can you imagine? I cannot imagine living through that. That's a crazy series of events.
Yeah.
It's like almost like, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here. This is not prepared, but it's almost like if you could imagine that, like Hitler had a beauty contest and forced some Jewish woman to become his, like, I don't know, like girlfriend, and then she hung out with him in some weird German bar, and like all of a sudden the Holocaust was canceled. Like, that's such a strange, I'm a third generation survivor. My grandparents went through the camps, and so I speak of the Holocaust with the utmost respect, and I certainly don't want to trigger anybody, and I'm sorry if I am, but at the same time, like, that's kind of what happened. Like, it's just so bizarre. So if anything can remind us that there's a greater picture and a sweet, loving, chuckling, caring, God behind the scenes, it's Purim. And that's what getting a little alcoholic buzz on Purim is supposed to lead to. Or even, if someone's able to handle it and remain a refined person, getting really drunk. Like, for example, my husband, Rebbetzin Bender, like, really, literally, the only way I can tell is he's drunk. He gets really quiet. It's because he turns to me at a certain point during the Purim zone. He looks at me and he says, in the sweet way, he says, sweet Braha, I love you. I really love you. And it's beautiful because that's what's in his heart. It says like wine goes in and secrets come out.
Yeah.
So I think that if someone's going through a time in their life where the secrets that are going to come out have to do with anger or have to do with really crass behavior, halacha would say clearly, like Jewish law would say clearly, you shouldn't be drinking that much because we are never ever permitted to get to the point where we are hurting other people, where we're hurting ourselves,
Right.
where we're behaving in a way that's abasing, our own dignity. That's definitely not, it's not Judaism. Now, I'll also say sometimes things get crazy in a happy way, in a good way. It doesn't mean that we have to be sitting there, having had a few shots and it's a really boring party. It could be a crazy party. Like Purim can get crazy, but as long as it's crazy in a way that's beautiful and healthy and loving, and not ugly or crass or violent or destructive, that's just not Judaism.
Right.
So that's what drinking on Purim is about, and it can get a lot of fun. It can be a really crazy wild party, and that's fantastic.
Right. Thank you for explaining that, because and all the nuances also, because it's very, very important. So thank you. And we're running out of time, but I have one last question I want to ask you. So because I know you live in Jerusalem, and celebrating Purim in Jerusalem is different than I think anywhere in the world. Or celebrating Purim in Israel, I should say, is different from anywhere in the world. What is the best part about Purim in Israel?
Okay, so what I like best is that we have 2 days.
Oh, you do?
In Jerusalem, well, kind of, because the way it works is that, and it says this in the Megillah too, that that in all of the around the world, in the entire kingdom of Achashverosh, which was a lot of places, the attacks against the Jews went on during a particular day, and the Jews fought back and won. But in the capital city of Shushan, the fighting went on for a second day, and the Jews succeeded in defending their lives. And so the holiday of Purim is celebrated around the world on a particular day, but it's actually the next day that it's celebrated in any city that had walls during the time of this actual historical event. So that's pretty much wherever Shushan is out there, and Tzfat and Jerusalem. I think it's Tzfat, pretty sure. And so it's kind of nice how here in Jerusalem, the kids get off for 2 days. And so the first day of Purim, everybody else is partying, and we're busy making hamantashen and, I don't know, making the mishloah manot, getting the costumes ready and stuff like that. And then our party starts that night and the next day. Some people end up doing 2 days of Purim because they'll go to friends and family outside Jerusalem and then come here and just make it like a really long, event. But I kind of like the day before, when it's sort of like you can feel the energy in the air, but it hasn't quite started yet, and then our party begins. I like that myself.
Thank you for telling me, because I had no idea. Because here I'm in New York, in America, it's 1 day. It's a really, really fun day, but it's only one. So it's interesting, to hear from a different perspective for 2 days. It's beautiful, really beautiful. And I want to thank you so much, Rebbetzin Braha, for joining us on America's Top Rebbetzins. It was truly a pleasure to have you with us. I had so much fun today, and may all the learning that we did be for Refuah Shalema for Rachel Devorah Bat Shoshana. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.